You are listening to the Social Hotelier Show, a podcast that inspires hoteliers to create meaningful and memorable experiences for their customers in pursuit of their passion. We share our views and experiences relating to hospitality, technological trends, and also relating to humanity. Here is your host, Sam-Erik Rutman.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the Social Hotelier podcast with me, Sam-Erik Rutman. Kia Finska is a Finnish travel and social media creator exploring the world through authentic, immersive experiences. Beyond content, she represents a new model of hospitality intermediary, bridging audiences, experiences, and destinations, curating journeys that connect people with cultures, from street food markets to luxury hotels, while building a strong, engaged community. She was chosen the Travel Influencer of the Year in Finland 2025, and our conversation will be about exactly that, because she travels continuously and connects people and connects destinations with her fans and the followers.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let's get started. I have a few sample questions to get the conversation going. To give our audience some context, can you walk us through your professional journey from your background in engineering and cybersecurity to building a global travel or strong travel brand, and what ultimately led you to start curating travel experiences for others?
Yes, so I have done quite a jump from one career to another. I'm originally a cybersecurity engineer, and I worked here in Finland during my studies, after studies, and then COVID hit. I moved abroad, decided to change everything in my life in 2 weeks. And to be honest, starting a company in social media was not something that I was planning on. It was more of something that I wanted to try for myself, not the company, but the social media part. I wanted to share experiences, and I've always loved cultures, traveling, and experiences like that. So I wanted to share that with someone online. And to my great surprise, it went quite viral already in the beginning. And in that moment, I'm a daughter of two entrepreneurs. So in that moment, I started thinking like, maybe there's a business here. And it took me, I think I moved abroad 2022. So right after COVID. And now it's 2026. So 4 years I've been doing social media. 3 years I've been an entrepreneur. And, one thing leads to another. And it was quite the shift from cybersecurity, where social media is like the worst thing ever, to being a professional in social media. But I'm very happy about the change.
Very good. So what was your inspiration to travel? Is that from your childhood with your parents, or is it other books, or what have you? What was sort of that kind of tickles you to, because you evidently are clearly enjoy the travel part?
I'm very interested in people. I'm very interested in learning about the stories behind people, and especially when it comes from cultures. I think a culture is such a beautiful and complicated thing where everything plays a part. And yes, when I was a child, we did travel quite a bit, but we often traveled to the same destinations. So I always had this interest in going somewhere else that I had not already been to. And when I was, I think, 18, I left for the first time alone, like solo traveling, backpacking kind of a trip. And it felt wonderful. I felt so independent and strong. And I remember I went to France and Italy, and being there alone, I felt like I could get so much closer to the culture and to the people, because when you are alone, you start talking with people you don't know. You sit in restaurants and you talk with the table next to you, and you go to a gelato shop and you talk with the owner, and things like that started happening, and I really enjoyed it. So I started slowly getting into it more, and I noticed how much I was able to learn about others when I was there physically. So I just wanted to put as much time and as much resources into that I could.
Wonderful. I think we have something very much in common, because I have exactly that same feeling. I started to travel as a student, when you had to get these inexpensive train tickets. So I covered Europe, and I traveled alone at the time also. And I made friends while on the train. I made friends in restaurants or in hotels, or at that time, I just checked at the railway station, well, where can I rent a room, because I couldn't afford a hotel. So there was always a family or couple that rented a room, and I got to know them a little bit, and they gave me tips also, places to see. So I just somehow started in a similar way, seeing the certain excitement, then you enjoyed new things. But yeah, that's the traveling is a wonderful way to go.
Yes.
But then you have taken this to a different level now when you're doing content now, social media. When did you realize your content start influencing people, actual travel decisions, not just inspiring? Because I understand you are organizing, bringing a part of your tribe to your destinations with you.
Yes. I didn't start it with the idea that I would influence people to travel or influence people to do anything, to be honest. I wanted to share information. That was my original thing. I moved to Brazil and I had never been to Latin America. I had never been to Brazil, to Southern America. I didn't know anything about the place where I was currently in. So everything was an experience for me. I went for lunch. That was an experience. I didn't know how the people eat lunch, and the restaurants are completely different than what we have here in Finland or in Europe even. The language, I didn't speak the language. Everything was completely new. So I started sharing this. I started sharing how it felt like to be there and what was the safety situation, how the people communicate with each other, what is the culture like, the foods. It wasn't, the idea was not to influence anyone to do anything. And I still like to think of myself as the not a journalist, but like a influencer that shares information in a very journalistic way, that I go somewhere and I share what it's like instead of giving tips on go to this cafe, which is also a wonderful thing to share tips for people. But my preferable way of sharing content is to share information. And while I was doing this, I think I showed a part of myself that people wanted to see. They were interested in my way of reacting to these things and my way of finding myself in very interesting situations because I talked to people so much. And it was actually originally an idea of a follower to go on a trip with me and my friend who's also working in the industry and who's also sharing a lot of content. And our followers said, we want to go on a trip with you. Like, you always end up in these the weirdest places, and how do you find these people, and how do you go here, and how did you find this hotel? I want to go to that hotel too. And then we said, like, okay, we'll see if we can make this work. And obviously, because we are from Finland, both of our companies are Finnish. Finland has really high standards of all of the legislation and the rules and everything. So we really needed to start thinking, like, how are we going to do this so that it's correct and it goes the right way? And a small idea became quite big. Now we've organized 3 trips so far, to Sri Lanka and 2 to South Africa. And then this fall in October, we are going to Peru, and November, Kenya and Egypt. So a small idea, just one comment online became quite a big thing. And to be honest, it's one of my favorite things that I get to do right now, because I get to meet the people that are behind the screen and that are looking at my posts and sending me messages, and suddenly they are with me experiencing the beautiful cultures of countries quite far away from us.
Yeah. These places where you're going now, or where you've been, is that the first time you've been to them, or have you been actually before you planned a trip? Let's say Peru. Have you been to Peru before, or
Never.
oh, you
Never.
never?
No. So the idea of the trips is that we go there for the first time also.
Okay.
So it is as close to our trip as possible. So a trip that we would do, that I would do personally, but I'm just allowing, or like making it possible for someone else to buy the trip too and go with me. And it's actually really, really important that I have not been there, because with the amount of travel experiences that I have, when I react to something like, wow, what is this? And how does this work? And I start asking a lot of questions because it's new for me also. A lot of the people that go with us have not traveled as much. and they might not be sure which thing right now is something that they should ask more questions about, or they might everything is so new they don't even come up with questions, and they've told me that it's so wonderful, Kia, that you are asking so much questions because we're just like wow to everything. So the fact that you have questions, we also want to hear the answers. We also are very interested, but we just cannot come up with the questions because everything feels really new to us. So it has been actually a really unique selling point maybe, or a unique point of interest for the people that go with us, that I have never been there either, and my partner has never been there either, because then we have this reaction to the new things also.
Yeah. I notice you use the word feel quite a bit. That means that you're sensing how it does it feel like, and how do you feel, and then you express that feeling also to your followers on the social media. Is that how, do I understand correctly?
Yes,
Uh,
I do this with all my heart, and
Yeah.
I every time I meet someone on my travels, even if it would never go online to any post, if even if it does, it's always very much of a feeling thing for me, because I want to understand the person, and I want
Nice.
to understand my follower also, how they see what I do, and what they are expecting of me, and on the other hand, how I can share information so that it makes them feel something, that
Yeah.
they actually feel like they are on the trip with me, even though they are watching it online.
Very good. So, just before you arrive in a new destination, how much research do you do, and how much do you intentionally leave open to discovery?
I leave quite a bit open to discovery. I check because I travel alone as a female. I need to check security things. I need to check if I go from the airport to. I usually stay at hostels when I travel alone because I want to have these experiences of meeting people. I need to check what is the most safest way for me to get from the airport to the hostel. I need to check if it's safe for me to walk alone, because I go very much from culture to culture. It's very widely all around the world. So security is one thing that I do check. But otherwise, I don't think I check too much, because I want to go there with no prejudice and just experience it, see it from the eyes of the local people. As said, I go to hostels usually because there I get really interesting conversations, and I get to talk to travelers alike, but also the hostel workers, the people that are actually from that town or country. And I want to create my opinion being there. But always, it's not always possible. If I share, for example, when I moved to Brazil, I told my friends about it here in Finland, and everyone was so scared for me because they had this idea that Brazil is the most dangerous country in the world, which obviously many Latin American countries do have a lot of troubles with their security situation. And me being often alone as a female, my friends they were really worried for me. But I noticed that those comments and that point of view made me scared too.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't want to think too much of that before. Of course, I want to make sure that I will be safe, but I don't want to go into a country with a strong opinion, because that will cloud my judgment when I am
Yeah.
there.
Yes, like a filter that stopped you from experiencing the place, uh, like it's something very new to you. Yeah, I can
Yeah.
appreciate that. But the security is so important that when you especially if you travel alone, and the tips about uh, airport, and look out for those guys who want to help you with the luggage right away in the arrival hall, and then the taxi you have to take. I mean, who's the honest one, or yeah, those are very, so you must be very sensitive. You have your antennas out all the time.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, you must. But it's also something that you get used to, I think.
yeah.
Um, it's not, often get also comments like, why do you spend time in countries where you need to think about these things? And my response every time is that if you only concentrate on that, there is so many wonderful experiences that you're going to miss out on.
That's so true. That's true. You mentioned you stay in hostels most of it. Do you cover also uh, hotels which are maybe branded hotels or different kind of hotels, maybe as part of your work, or how does it work for you?
Yes, I've been working a lot with different hotels. I do when I travel with someone, with family members, for example, usually we do hotels because it's more comfortable and we enjoy them. And I love hotel experiences. I love to learn how different hotels work, all the way like from Finland to any country in the world. I was recently, collaborated with a Finnish chain called Lapland Hotels. And I was completely in love with how much they brought the Finnish culture to every person that goes to the hotel. Like when you go to the breakfast, when you go to the rooms with the music and everything, I really appreciate those kinds of hotel experiences just as an experience. So I do really like to go to hotels also. But when I travel alone, I usually prefer, sometimes I do hotels, but usually I do hostels because of these
Yes.
social connections.
Yeah.
And also, I think it's somehow more low key because hostels are usually, mm, they're easier to kind of find things to do, find the next way to get to your next city. I often do like backpacking bus tours also alone. So hostels help you out with that a lot, which
Yes. Yes.
I think hotels should do maybe a little bit more, but there is some kind of a, maybe when you go to a hotel, the client is not expected to have a backpack, being on a backpacking tour. But when you're in a hostel, that's the expectation. And
Yes.
that's how also the hotel curates their services to a certain client. Whereas in the hostels, their services are to a completely different kind of a client.
Yeah, I think that's where hotels have a lot of learning to do because people in different phases of their life have different needs. I mean, if you stay in a hotel, of course you're looking at, okay, this is security is good. If you are new to the place, you can see that they're organized in a way. But there are people who enjoy staying a little bit longer time in the country and but still want to enjoy that hotel experience, but still want to feel the pulse of the country. So I think hotel has to do a better job than offering your standardized bus tours or so on that
Yeah.
give option to people.
Yes. And I think there is some kind of a, how would I explain this? There's some kind of an expectation of what kind of a trip you are on
Yeah.
to what kind of an accommodation you choose.
Yes.
Um, Me, like for my work, I've been to hotels of all kinds, from I I think high-end luxury to almost a hotel, almost a hostel, like everything in between, and then the hostels. So I feel like I have quite a bit of experience from everything on the whole range. And every time when I go to a hotel that is more luxury, more expensive, maybe, I feel bad that there is an expectation of everything also being quite posh in a way. Because when I go to a hotel, I want to feel like I'm coming home. I'm not home, but this is my home away from home now.
Mm-mm. Yeah.
And I always talk to people a lot and I want to have chit chats with like everyone working in the hotel and kind of learning. And sometimes I see people, I mean, everyone experiences the hotel in their own way, but I wish there was not that much of an expectation, that you could actually come to the hotel with your backpack and be like, yes, like last night I was in a hostel and I had a really good time, but now I want my own room and I want some privacy and all of that. And that's completely normal and fine,
Yeah.
which is what I do quite a bit. And I always get funny comments about it.
Yeah, I mean, a hotel at its best should make you feel like that you meet like a new friend. Could be one of the staff who will also give you the friendly tips where to go, and also make you feel comfortable. And then I always talk about those things whenever I arrive to hotel. I never been before. My antennas are out. I looked how does that arrival experience? How does it make me feel?
Yeah.
And that's why, and that's how why I talked about the word feel that you mentioned, that is ultimately most important thing. It doesn't matter, is it the most luxurious finishing is fine, but I think it's just that the staff and the people who are there who meet you, that you are not just a reservation number and the credit card number, and while they're staring at the computer screen, and you don't even get eye contact. So those are things I'm very, very sensitive to that, and I can sense that maybe you're one of the similar type that expect that you can get the connection with somebody when you go to a place, whether it's a hostel or a hotel.
Yes, exactly. And I've been to really wonderful hostels that I felt like I would bring my mother here because this is such an experience that it's always for me the if I really like something, I tell that this is something that I would bring my mother to because that is a high I really need to like it to be bringing her there. But I've been to wonderful hostels where I felt like the moment I step in, the people at the reception are my friends. And I think that is the most wonderful thing. But I've also had that experience in really lovely hotels. So
Yeah,
it's very much of like depending on the hotel and maybe sometimes also depending on the culture of how people are received and how people are seen in different situations. So that's also, I think, a interesting part. Like, for example, going to hotels or hostels in Asia, in many countries in Eastern Asia, I think the culture already is so accommodating and they are so happy to receive you. That's also like, it doesn't matter if you choose a hostel or a hotel, their reception you will get is already very like kind and very thankful that you have arrived. So
yeah.
it's a cultural thing also.
Yeah, I mean, uh, I was fortunate to work most of my career in Asia, Southeast Asia, and what people talk about the ultra luxury hotels where they are the pampering side of things. Uh, Actually, that's quite normal, regardless of the star category of the hotel. I mean, of course, there are exceptions, but as overall, the level of feeling welcome to a place is they make you feel really welcome
Yes.
when they do it well, and they kind of try to figure out what fruit do you like, and then they maybe surprise you with the following morning if you're in Sri Lanka or in Indonesia or in Thailand. They surprise you with the you should try this ripe mango, which is I think you will enjoy it, or have this with breakfast and so on. So that's a feeling they give you, and that's something that uh, maybe we can learn something here in Finland also about that.
Yes, I think it's such a beautiful way of like showing that you are welcome because it's
Yeah,
always the smallest things that make you feel really happy and in everything in relationships and hotel experiences and flights for example it's the smallest things and maybe sometimes you might feel that this goes unnoticed but I don't think it does because it makes you feel some way and it makes you feel warm and welcome.
yeah. On a plane, what has been some small thing that kind of happily surprised you? Because the flights can be quite monotonous, but was there something that touched you? Any particular airline or flight that made you really feel special?
I think there's so big differences with airlines,
Yeah,
like huge. I fly quite a bit of any airline because I go from so random destinations to others. So I always have to think about what's the smartest route instead of preferring some specific airline. Um, but I think it's always just actually like the flight attendant stopping to acknowledge you because I realize that they have so many clients, they have so many guests on the plane. But sometimes when something happens, like they're, for example, serving food, and then something happens and we have a little laugh. And then I notice that she also or he also stops for a while to acknowledge me and to notice me and have a fun moment just like for a few seconds. I think those are always really wonderful because it tells that the person that is working there as the flight attendant is actually doing it because they enjoy it. They're not there forced. They're not there like, I just need to give you this food and next, 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 next. But they
Yeah.
actually stop and have this little moment.
Yes.
And I think those are the best ones. Like, it's not that much of what they offer. Well, yes, I've been to flights where it's very, you feel like you're just not served anything or something like that. And especially in a long flight, if the food is not enjoyable, I mean, that's not nice. But still, I think the human contact is the most important, just like with hotels.
Sure. Well, we're talking about food now. When you travel in these very interesting locations, do you prefer a very organized restaurant, or do you go to street food or street kitchens to
Mhm.
try something? And when you do, what draws you to a spot instinctively? Local recommendations, or do you maybe do some research?
I do a lot of research. Also, I ask people around, like in the hostel or the hotel, or I always ask, like, where would you go? What would be your go-to place? Um, I love all kinds of food.
Yeah.
I love as local as it gets. I was just recently on a trip where we went through a lot of Michelin restaurants in Spain, which was wonderful because of the experiences of the flavor profiles and the overall an experience like that is just it's an experience. It's not only food, it's something to be enjoyed. But then on the
Yeah.
other hand, I have a really wonderful memory from Taiwan. And I was in Taipei and I met this local man. I think he was maybe in his 70s and maybe 80s, something like that. And he offered me fruit from the street truck, seafood. And I remember thinking, like, I wonder if this is okay for me to eat. Will my body be okay with this? But since he wanted to offer, and Taiwanese people are so kind and they're very, very like, let me give this to you and you're welcome. And I want to offer this. And so I sat down and we had that meal and it was wonderful. And,
Yes.
and it was probably like, it was so low key. It was on a small street in Taipei and there was no tourists around. But I have such a good memory from that moment. So I
Yeah.
think food, again, now that I'm answering your question, I find myself all the time coming back to the human contact and to
Yes.
people, meeting people. But I think that's what I love about food also is the fact that it can share so many stories and it can share so much history about a culture and then you can sit down with someone. I didn't speak his language and he didn't speak mine, but somehow we were able to sit for 2 hours on those plastic chairs and by that plastic table and have a really wonderful evening.
Yeah. Taipei, I mean, we went with my wife, we went to Taipei and it was an unbelievable experience. Of course, we saw the museums, but the seafood, you mentioned seafood, that was really something that they can offer there. It is unbelievably. And I wish there would be some Taipei restaurants outside Taiwan, but I think you have to go there to get the best possible experience.
Taiwan is one of my favorite countries, I must
Yeah.
say, because it is so interesting. I truly felt like this is the way they do things here. There is nowhere else in the world. It was so beautiful. And also, I went around a little bit. I went to South Taiwan and I felt so different there compared to any other country because everything is so extremely safe. Everyone is so kind. The food is really wonderful. No matter where you go, it's really, really good. And I feel like the people take it to heart that they offer good food
Yes.
no matter what their background is. So I really, really enjoy Taiwan.
Yeah. So, have there been moments when stepping outside your comfort zone with local food completely changed your perception of a place?
Oh, well, this was one example. For
Yeah.
example, this with this man in Taiwan.
Yeah.
Um, but yes, many. I also I was in Tanzania and I had a driver and we were going around a little bit and he took me to one of the experiences to meet like local tribes. And once we were driving back from there, he said there is a small town, a really low key small town with really bad roads. but they have a grill there, and there is a woman that has a restaurant. It's not a building, but it is a woman that is selling the meat that she's cooking on the barbecue. And he asked if I'm hungry. And I said, of course, I always say yes to things like this. So then we drove there. I remember walking there. The kids were touching me because they felt I looked so different from them. And then we had barbecue. The meat was completely different. You could feel that the meat was, um, how to say this, the cheap part of the animal, because, of all the fatty parts and all of that, and it was very small pieces, but it was wonderful. It was really, really good. Like, we didn't eat all of it. You always ate a little bit and then you took the rest out because there was so much of these, I don't know what it is in English, but these parts of the meat that are hard.
Oh yeah,
And
yes.
but it was so wonderful. And then we were eating there, and then suddenly the man, he was local Tanzanian, and he said something to one of the waitresses, and then the waitress sat down and she started eating also. And we had just one plate, and the food was there, and everyone straight with their hands were eating from the same plate. And I felt like this is a sense of community that we do not have in Finland, because my driver, he was really wonderful. We were spending 1 week together there, and he didn't know this waitress woman, but he invited her to sit down and eat also. So we all ate with our bare hands from the same plate. And then me being from a completely different country, looking completely different and feeling a little bit like I could feel how different I look. But there was no issue there. We were just sitting and we were just having barbecue meat.
Wonderful.
And that changed a lot also of my perception of Tanzania, because I think there is also a very strong uh, media sold thought about Africa.
Yes.
And that was such a wonderful moment. Just sitting there, no hurry in the world.
Very good. So because you're now organizing these travel experiences for your followers,
Yeah.
what kind of value are you aiming to create beyond the destination itself? Because personally, I can see that you experience a lot of things, but now you're bringing people with you. There'll be How do you go about that?
The idea is to create a trip that I would go on.
Yeah.
That would be my personal trip. Um, so we try to do as much of local experiences that we can, as much of learning about local cuisine, learning about the history, not making it um, too much of, we don't, for example, we don't go to museums, but we do go to local areas where you can learn about the way of life or why people are like this. For example, in South Africa, we did visit an area where local people live, that a township. I don't know if you're
Yes.
familiar with
Yes.
townships, but we visited one to learn about it, to learn how the people live, like just not to only see the fancy parts of Cape Town, the touristy areas, but also to actually experience the real world, so to say. Not saying that the tourism is not real, but there is always two parts of
Yeah.
the story. And that's the goal. I always want the people to feel like they didn't just go somewhere and experience the hotel experience, which can also be wonderful, but they actually now know a lot about the country that they visited. They know about the people, they know about the language, they know some nice to know facts, they have tasted the food, and they can come back home saying that they have so many stories about the country, not only the experiences in restaurants or the hotel, which
Yeah.
both are very important, I think. But
Sure.
but I think that it's really important to see the culture that you are visiting.
Absolutely. So, how do you maintain a sense of authenticity as your content and experience become more structured and commercial because you're organizing these tours?
Yeah.
Are you worried about that, or do you feel you're going, you feel you're on the right track, or do you test yourself to make sure that you keep that authenticity going?
I'm not worried about it. I think
Okay.
it's so strongly representing who I am. I'm very careful with who I work with when I do any kind of collaborations or when I create trips, because I don't, if there would be ever anything that I would do organically on my account and it would be a problem to anyone I'm working with, it has never been. But if it would happen, then it would just be a natural ending to that partnership. But
Yeah.
it is very important to me that my accounts represent who I am, not only because it's important to me, but also my grandmother follows my accounts. My mother follows my accounts.
Yeah.
My best friends follow my accounts. All of the closest people to me follow what I do online. So I'm not only talking to 150,000 people that are following me, I'm talking to my family and also my friends, and I'm sharing. They also see what I experience in the world through my accounts. So it is the most important thing for me that it stays as authentic as possible. And I am in a very lucky position because if someday it feels like this is not going to work for me anymore, it doesn't maybe pay my bills anymore, I cannot continue the business, I'm still an engineer. So I
Nice.
have a backup plan, so to say, which is wonderful because it keeps me actually doing it as authentically as possible. And it keeps me really doing it for the love of doing it because I'm not forced to do anything. I can keep it the way I want to. And I've many times thought that maybe if I were to go back to engineering, which I don't see happening right now because I love my job so much, but if that were to happen, I think I would still continue to some extent doing my social media because I enjoy it so much.
Very good. Uh, on the social media side, do you see, I mean, you have done this now for several years. What's the direction social media is going? Are there certain
Mm,
platforms are disappearing, or are you comfortable that the platforms you're on will
mm.
remain as strong as they are? Or how do you see it? Because I feel there's some changes going on, but I'm not sure quite what they are. So I just wonder your view on this.
Yes, I think I don't know what TikTok is doing. They're not they're messing things up a little bit, I think.
I
I think Instagram is really strong.
yeah,
TikTok is still strong, but I think it's a balance going around with the algorithms because it always comes down to the algorithms. That is the thing that is keeping the people in the application or throwing them out, making them irritated at something. And there was a time when the Instagram algorithm was really not that good and TikTok was really strong, and the situation has changed. And we never know. Maybe it might change again. We don't
yeah,
know. Um,
yeah,
but I think short content is still like short video form content is strong. w- Whether you put it on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, wherever, that keeps people watching. And I think maybe like longer form content, that's something that I really enjoy on YouTube. I think it's coming back, but these are things that you can just follow along and see what happens. And maybe I'll say something now and then I'll watch this video in a year and be like, huh, how wrong I was. Because you never know what the people behind the algorithms decide to do next. And
yeah.
I truly believe that the algorithm is so strong in curating what we think about the applications. So
Sure. I noticed that in during the episodes I create, I have majority of the people will look at the YouTube side,
mm,
but then they will switch over to the podcast
mm,
side, and the audio, the story, the conversations, they're not edited. They will be the same. But some people just want to uh, while they're in the car, they prefer to listen to
yeah,
the conversation, and I find that's what's going on. And I found that people are listening to you podcasts on my YouTube channel also. So it's not only the videos, and that's where I only have maybe a thumbnail there. So I'm playing around with those things because I'm curious how things are evolving, and also the generation shift where social media has been seen as a certain age group, but now things are actually changing. You see 65 plus generation using social media in a different way, using maybe long form, talking about some particular things that they are fascinated about. Wow, listen, we can have many episodes about topics, but I have two more questions before we wrap up to move to off the mic segment. And one question I'd like to ask all my guests, besides what we have talked about, what are other trends you see happening in hospitality that hotels should take note of?
In hospitality, meaning any?
Hotels,
Okay.
resorts, city.
Trends.
Because you talked about already the guest experience.
Yeah. Something that I
Lapland
have
Hotel has done a terrific job before you.
amazing job. Really nice. I think something that I've noticed, I don't know if it's more of the places that I tend to gravitate towards and go to, but I've noticed a lot of hotels, a lot of hostels too, and restaurants also are really bringing forward local produce, local businesses, local companies. Well, for example, Lapland Hotels, they had like really small things in the hotel that were created by small Finnish businesses. Also, restaurants that I visited in Spain last week when I was there, they were talking a lot about the local produce, local wine, local Iberico ham, everything local. That is I really enjoy that. Also, I've noticed it in the Caribbean when I've been traveling there. There is a lot of talk about, for example, I've spent a lot of time in Aruba, which is a really dry island. They're not able to grow that much, or they don't have produce coming from the country, so they need to bring everything with ships. And still, they are talking about local alcohol, for example, or local honey, local spicy sauces. They're always bringing it forward, and I think it's really beautiful when hotels get into that. I've noticed a lot of breakfasts, for example, in hotels where they mention that we will be doing this avocado toast and putting on top local spices, or like just the smallest things, but they mention it, and I really like that, and I hope more people would do that, because it's a win-win for everyone. For the tourist, it's wonderful to experience the localness, but it's also a win-win for the hotel, for the company that is providing the product or the service. And I love that people are doing that more.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that. I'm part of creating a resort in Cyprus and also in Croatia. We are definitely we are not importing anything. And it has to be from the within 150 kilometers from where the resort is located. So supporting the local farmers and local fishermen and so on. If there's a location where the hotel is located and where they don't have oranges, we don't import oranges from Spain or Italy just because somebody wants to have fresh squeezed juice. We just offer them the locally produced juice from whatever fruits or berries which is available. And I think that's something which I'm very strongly feel about also.
And I think one of like the most wonderful experiences I have about hotels, now that I started thinking about this, is usually from these experiences, because I was in Cyprus actually, I think 2 years ago, and the hotel that I was staying in, they offered different honeys from the area. And there
Yes.
were some honeys with pistachio, there was a natural honey, there was honeys with different flavorings. And to this day, I can taste in my mouth how wonderful the honey with the pistachio was. It was my favorite thing, one of my favorite things of the whole hotel, and it was a beautiful hotel. But every morning I was looking forward to having my honey with the pistachio, and it was local produce.
Yeah.
So you never know what is the thing that the customer or the person in the hotel really like
You,
concentrates on.
you mentioned honey and you mentioned Cyprus. So I have to tell you a little bit. The
Yeah.
resort in Cyprus, the owner of that resort, he believes in the healing power of bee venom. So because
Mm.
for arthritis, and then so that this type of therapy, he's opening up part of the resort is going to have a wellness area, and besides the bee venom, he will have licensed doctors who can provide that. Is for people with arthritis or other ailments, and they have been this is a medical It has been done already for several thousand years, but the therapy with bee venom. But besides that, he also has he won in London some amazing prize about his honey, and I went with a master beekeeper to see what they were doing. And what I learned was that they are feeding the bees with honey, not by sugar water, and that makes a world of a difference when you actually taste that honey actually.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's amazing. Because I
yeah.
remember in Finland, I don't like honey. But in Cyprus, I was eating it a lot. I really, really enjoyed it. So that's my trip when I noticed that there is differences in honey too.
Lastly, if people want to reach out to you, Kian, where can they find you? Because we're going to move over to the off the mic here next, but just sort
Yeah.
of your social media or emails or websites, and I will put that into the description of this episode.
Yeah. Instagram, TikTok are my main channels with the name Kia Finska, which is my name. I also am starting on YouTube a little bit, but I think Instagram and TikTok are the two channels that you can find me the most active on.
Very good. And also for all the viewers, uh, visit Kia and me on that YouTube channel, my YouTube channel. The episode will be there as a main feature coming up very, very soon. All right, now we're going to do off the mic. Now, off the mic is an idea that many people who I have a conversation with, they are very focused on the professional side of things, and they are just thinking about how to explain a theory about how to run the business and so on. And I found that it's kind of restrictive because I think there's the other side of a personality. So I'll try with this, maybe some funny and quirky questions, reveal more about the person behind the persona. I don't think there's a problem with you because you are very natural and you speak about your experience. But anyway, I'm going to test a few questions with you if it's all right with you.
Perfect. Of
Yeah.
course.
After months of traveling, what's the one thing you secretly hope to find in your fridge when you finally get home?
Something very typical Finnish. My mother always asks me what I want to eat first when I come back to Finland after a long time abroad. And I usually always say sausage sauce, nakkikastike, and potato mash. Something very normal, typical Finnish. I love that. And also, I really love Finnish mämmi, which is this dessert. If there is that in the fridge, I will be very, very happy.
Is it with cream or milk?
Cream, but
All
no
right.
sugar.
All right. What, what's the most questionable street food decision you ever made, and would you do it again?
I have many. I don't know which one to mention. I've had the feet of pigs with still the foot showing in the Caribbean beach with like a sandy beach. Um, it was wonderful, the flavor, but just the place was too wrong. It was 35 degrees Celsius and the sun was shining. It just didn't feel right. But I did have it. Also, the Taiwanese story that I told earlier, I was very worried in the situation. Is this seafood, raw seafood, okay for me to eat? But I would absolutely do it again because it was wonderful and I had no problems. I've never had actually oh, I have one. I had too much wine before going to a hammam experience in Morocco. And it wasn't like crazy, but it takes a lot of liquids off of your body. So wine is not the thing you should have before.
Yeah. What key things do you out for? And what key things you look out for before you eat in a street food outlet? If you go for the first time, you check something you check out about them.
I think I check the people more, like how are they serving the food and how proud are they of the food. I think that's a really big tell.
Yeah.
Also, how many local people are around that um, specific place. If there's a lot of locals eating, I have a really wonderful experience in Guatemala, for example. There was a street food place. It was there every weekend, and there was a lot of locals eating there. So I went there eating every day that they were there also. It was
Okay.
really good. And they would always recommend me something because it was my first time in Guatemala. I didn't know anything about the local food. So they would always recommend, like, this is my favorite, and this is my daughter's favorite, and this is my husband's favorite. And then I would always try everyone's favorite food. So I think that's a really good tell.
Yeah. If your suitcase could talk, what would it complain about the most?
Too much cosmetics. Too much makeup.
What's one travel habit you have that would probably surprise your followers?
Hmm. That I'm a really bad packer. I pack really ugly. My clothing is always with so many wrinkles, and um, I could do a better job in that. With the amount of traveling I do, I could pack better.
If you had to choose a luxury hotel bed or a once-in-a-lifetime street food experience, which one wins?
Street food experience for sure. But I would love to go after the street food to the luxury hotel bed.
What's one small, oddly specific detail in a hotel that instantly tells you whether it's great or not?
Huh. Maybe the reception. Because the moment that you step in, how you are greeted, if there's chairs that you can sit on after a long travel, how they process your information, all of that, I think it's a really good tell because before you step into your room, you will already have a feeling of the hotel from the reception. So
Yeah.
I think that's a really good tell.
Okay. What's the most Kia luxury indulgence, the thing you'll never apologize for?
Hmm. Maybe sitting in airport lounges. Sitting there, having a glass of champagne, and even if I'm going on a backpack trip, I will go into the lounge. Even if I'm budget traveling, I will enjoy myself at the airport.
So that sets you in the mood for the travel and
Yeah, that's
right.
something that I really enjoy.
Good. Um, what's a behind-the-scenes travel moment that still makes you laugh every time you think about it?
I think I'm the kind of person that's laughing all the time at everything because I don't think anything is embarrassing anymore at this point. I just laugh at everything. Um, so there's many. Uh, how would I think every time that I'm also filming a lot with my camera when I'm going around, that always awakens funny conversations. And I was, for example, in Morocco when I was walking around with a camera, just filming my normal content, and the locals started asking if I'm famous and a celebrity. And it awakened the most funny conversation because there was a culture difference there. Like for me, it feels like, wait, what? And for them, they were like, can we take a picture? And they had no idea who I am.
Yeah.
So they just wanted a picture because they thought I'm famous.
Very good. When you're not leading a travel excursion, what's something surprisingly ordinary that brings you real joy?
Again, the human contacts, that's the first thing I think about. Like going, for example, when I go to a hostel and I talk with the people that are in the same dorm with me, because I always sleep in dorms with 5 to 10 people, and having those conversations, I think those are really funny. And yeah, you learn a completely new side of people in the dorms.
Yeah, very good. Okay, Kia, that was the off the mic. So I really appreciate you to have joined today, and I really enjoyed the conversation we had. So thanks very much for all the fantastic insights.
Thank you so much. This was such a nice discussion to have.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Social Hotelier Show. Make sure to visit our website, The Social Hotelier Show, blueberry.net, where you can subscribe to the show in Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Play, or via RSS, so you never miss a show. While you're at it, if you find value in this show, we appreciate a rating in Apple Podcast. Or if you simply tell a friend about the show, that will help us out too. Be sure to tune in for our next episode.